Hello and welcome to Boston Brace's Rodin4D Neo O&P Modification Software Learning Series. In this part of the series, we'll be covering Neo, but in a basic entry-level approach. I'm Dan, I'll be your host. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Alright, for those who have the Neo installed on their desktop, it's a red icon. The red clover with the 4 in it. Double click on that to start the software. Once we get it started up, this is the new format. It's more of like a Windows interface. Top menu line, you have your selections. We'll start off in the File. Left click on the word File. You get your drop down. In here, this is where you do your saves, save as, access to your patient directory and patient manager. Also gives you lead into your options. In the options, here's where you can control your colors for your models, your background, your lines that you draw. Next selection, options. In here, you have the option to, you have a toolbar that collects the tools as you use them, and you can change either left side or right side. Also the axis orientation, how you want the model to be presented on the screen. Next we have paths. In this option you can choose the path in which you want to save your models, your libraries. You can even path it to a network if you share with multiple users. Under the General tab, this is where you can change your language. You can also change the units of measurement that you want to see on the screen. You can choose millimeter, centimeter, even up to inch and miles if you choose. Alright, next we have marks. In here, this is as we progress through the software, you'll see we'll have summits, lines, transitions. You're able to change the shape and the size of the lines and the spheres that you see on the screen. Level curves. We'll cover this option in a few minutes. This one here, this is just a topographical, like a graph that shows on top of the model. And you're able to change the distance between the lines, basically how you want to view it on the screen. The grid you'll see, those are the cubes or the squares in the background of the model. The default is the 50 millimeters, but you can change that to any size you want. The 50 millimeters is 2 inches, that's what I use, but you can change that to whatever which you'd like. Background. If you want to put in a background image so you can look at it whenever you modify, feel free to do so. Trade tools. Trade tools, this has to do with your cranial reporting. Under measurement angle, that's the cross-cranial angle that the measurement is taken from. You also can change the angle range. You have the option to increase or decrease that measurement angle. And I have the default set at 5 degrees, so each time you change it you can go 35, 40, 45, or if you want to go the other way, 25, 20, etc. Alrighty, now to access your patient manager to create a patient folder, you have two ways of doing this. One is in the upper left hand corner, click on File. In the drop down, click on Patients. This is your patient manager. This is where you can collect all your patients. You can create folders. You can sort by model type, clinic type, however you'd like to set it up. The second way to access this is, and you'll use this more so once you get familiar with it, is the red folder over here on the right hand side. Single left click brings you directly into patient manager and you don't get all the other options. Now, if you have a scanner hooked up and you want to create a patient file and hop into your scanning or importing of an AOP or an ST file, what you do here is to create the patient folder. The very top of the list, Patients folder, if I right click on that, drop down, click on New Patient. Alright, here they want the last name first and the first name last. Select OK. That puts you over here on the left hand side and that highlights which one. The 0 indicates there's no file attached or inside of that folder. So if I right click on this, option, New Form. If I have a scanner hooked up, I click on New Scan. Identify what model type you're going to scan. Click OK. And this automatically brings up the scanning software. Now if I had a scanner attached, in the lower right it would say Scanner Initializing, and you'd start your scanning process. Now if you're going to import an AOP or STL, same thing, right click, New Form, New Form Library if you're going to import an AOP file or bring in a library template. If you're going to import an STL file, you select New Form/rescan. Alright, now I'm going to load in a basic Scoli, a spinal scan. Okay, now with your mouse, the scroll wheel zooms you in and out. Page up, page down tilts. Your arrow keys basically will rotate the model in the direction of the arrow. You also have your orientation cubes at the bottom. The shaded area indicates which direction or which end of the model will show, face forward. If you right click and hold down your right mouse button, you're able to spin the model. If you need to shift your model up, down, left, right, you can hold down the control key with one finger, push down the right mouse button with the other, and I'm able to relocate, shift this, and then zoom in. Let's say you had to work on a certain area or get right inside of a crest that you wanted to get some more detail on. Alrighty, your tools. Icon based. Top row also has the name of the tool underneath each tool. Once you get familiar with the tools, which ones you like to use, you can actually, in the upper right, there's a little arrow. You can click on that. That takes away the labeled icons and just gives you the smaller version. So once you get familiar, you can minimize that and actually have a larger modification screen. For just starting out, you can also hover your cursor over each tool, and that will also tell you what and identify which tool. Alright, we'll run through a few basic tools, and we're going to start off with the actual basic tool itself. Alright, this basic tool, it collects over here. I have it selected to collect in the lower right. You have a saw tool, curve saw, and if you scroll down a little bit, you can actually see the action. You have normal, only add, only remove. You have a spade, plane, and eraser. The saw tool, that's for making quick slices. Now, if I select saw tool, I left click, hold down, release, the arrow indicates the direction of the cut, the material that's going to come off the model. Now, if I use my cursor, left click at the tip of the arrow, it removes that material. Alright, now we'll show you what the curve saw does. Curve saw, this is new in Neo, version 10.0166, I believe. When you click on curve saw, it gives you another view of your model over here in the left hand window. So if I left click, keep left clicking multiple times, I'm actually able to make a bending cutting plane. Left window is for preview, right window is the action window. So if I hold my cursor close to that blue cut line, left click on the line, it makes that cut. If you're not satisfied with that or you want to change it, over here on the right hand side, you can see where it says 66. That's the number of clicks I've made using this tool. You can back up incrementally and return your cuts, or all the way back, you can turn it on and off. Alright, Rasp. Normal, that's a blend tool. It fills in the low spots, takes down the high spots. If you use it, be careful. It can be a little bit aggressive, but it's a very good tool for doing a quick smooth on the model when you have your rough scan like we do on the screen. The only add, that fills in low spots to what it thinks the topographical surface is. It won't keep building. The only remove, same. That'll remove a high spot down to what it thinks the top is. Now, you can also control the size of the tool. Watch, I'll left click. You see the circle. If I take the slide bar and increase or decrease, control the size of the tool, and you can control the shape if you want to go horizontal oval or vertical. If you left click and hold down, that's how you start your smoothing. You blend, rotate your model, and now we'll go to posterior view, and I'll show you the only add. So what I'll do is, this is actually a dip from a t-shirt, but I clicked only add. If I left click and hold down and go over that area, it's filling in that little valley. Now you see the little posterior, that's where the transmitter is. If I use only remove, left click, hold down, that takes that down as well. Now I can go back to normal and continue my my blend or my smooth. Doesn't matter which way you go as far as when you do your smoothing. I tend to go left to right. You can go up and down. That doesn't really matter. It's just a personal preference. Alright, moving down. The Spade. That's like adding plaster. And I'll show you on the screen. Left click, hold down. This will keep building and building. If I select limit amplitude, right now it's set for 10 millimeters. So that means if I hold down the mouse here all day long, it's only going to be restricted to building 10 millimeters. If I uncheck that, that will just keep building and building the longer I hold that mouse. Now I'll back up and undo that. Now we come down to the plane. This is the opposite now. This is going to be removing material, like a draw knife. So if I left click and I keep holding down, it's going to keep removing and removing. Just like the Spade, I can also set that depth too. Default is 10, but I can change that to whatever I like. So I can hold that mouse down for as long as I want, and it's only going to remove 10 millimeters. Alright, the eraser. The eraser is a blend tool as well, but it's not as aggressive. So I like using this if I'm doing a crest or some detailed work. I'll use this tool more frequently because it won't erode. If you had a crest and used the blend tool, the Rasp, that will take down a lot of detail. So you might want to hop into the eraser tool. Left click on that. Like I said, it's almost like a whitewash. It's very fine as far as what it takes off. To save your tools, check mark, left click on that, and then it collects it over here, either on the left or right side depending on your preference. So if you uncheck this tool, it brings you back to your original. Alright. We also have, we're going to show you the bend tool. And you'll find some of these tools, they work a lot very similar to each other as far as how you apply them and how to utilize the amplitude. Now the bend, you have application zone, meaning where would you like it to bend. Right now it's on total. That's like grabbing it by the top and the bottom. Oops. Change the selection top and bottom and bending that way. You can also just control the bottom or top. If you select two levels, you can actually select which levels and where you want that on the model. So when you left click, it does drop these red lines. If I hover my cursor over it, that's a little hand. If I left click, hold down, you get your 4 arrows. and you're able to maneuver these lines where you want them. So you can actually do the modification in real time. Now, another pretty cool tool we have in here is the Shift tool, and that's these horizontal arrows. Left click, and same thing, I'll select 3 levels, I'll drop 3 lines, left click, left click, left click again. Now you have your amplitude and the direction in which you want to bend or shift, anterior, posterior, or ML. So if I use my scroll wheel, you can dictate how much shift you want, and you can move these red lines and tell it where you want that shift. You can also do MLEP shifts. So eventually, when you get further comfortable and more familiar with Rodin, you can import your x-rays and use the Shift tool to make your thoracic shifts with an imported x-ray. Up here in the upper right, there's a little floppy disk looking thing. That's the save button. There's also in Neo, it'll save every 20 seconds. So if the computer does crash or Rodin freezes up, it will have the a backup model when you restart the software. For making your modifications, doing your build-ups and reliefs, we have a couple of tools here. We have area tool, and we have a modeling tool. Yes, but let's not forget our balance tool. The balance tool, that makes your model symmetrical while maintaining ML circumference and AP. Left click on that, it looks like a little gas gauge. Over here, application zone, you can have the complete model, just the top or just the bottom. Now, you have a slide bar. You can dictate what percentage of symmetry you want. If you're doing a soft body jacket, you want some correction, not a lot. Patient can't tolerate it. You could slide bar it to whatever percentage you want, say 50%, or if you're doing a symmetrical jacket, all the way to the right, that's full symmetry while maintaining ML circumference AP. Alright, so let's get into the modeling tool. This is for doing some reliefs. You can do reliefs, ribs, crests, and this is the good first learner tool, and eventually I like to see people get into the area tool. We'll cover that in 1 second. So with this tool, if you left click and hold down, you can see blue line perimeter, pink line interior. The default is 10 millimeters, meaning it grew 10 millimeters. So if I decrease this to 0, which I like to do, I can draw my contour first and then make the impression on it. So if I click outside of it and hold down, I can shrink the size. If I left click inside, I can change the shape, make it bigger. If I double left click and hold down, I'm able to relocate that modification wherever I'd like. Once you have a set where you like, now we can increase or decrease the amplitude and make our modification. Now click on the check mark to accept your modification. And also we have the cursor line. Now with the cursor line, as I left click and hold down, I can slide it up and down the model. This gives you real time in your lower left here, the APML circumference. So you can compare your measurements or check your modifications as you go. Now, with a modification, if you wanted to copy that crest to the opposite side, if I right click, I get a drop down menu. I can click on Symmetry. That copies it to the opposite side. You can also, again, turn these on and off anytime you'd like through the modification. If you want to delete a modification, if I right click on this, same thing in the drop down, delete selected tool. Now what we'll do is we'll draw the other side with the area tool. Now with the area tool, here's your contours you can select your shapes with, meaning these orange dots, that would be the click sequence of your mouse. In this middle one, you'd get an arc, and this is a straight line one. I kind of prefer the straight line one when I'm drawing something out. It's just a little bit easier for me to highlight the perimeter. Now once you get the perimeter drawn, click on Finish Contour. Now I'm going to draw the inside, the action line. This is the line that's actually going to be doing the amplitude, negative or positive. So if I left click, left click, left click, action line. So once you get that drawn in there, now you tell the software Finish Edge. That tells it, okay, I'm done drawing my perimeter and my interior. Now we're ready to do the actual mod. You can either leave it as a straight line, or what I like to do is draw it with a straight line and then go back to the arc. That rounds it off nice. Overall amplitude, decrease. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see this. Now with the summits, if I left click, it highlights. If I click down again, you get the 4 arrows. You're able to manipulate and relocate these summits. That's one of the things I like about this tool. It gives you more control of your modification. Same thing with the outside. Double left click, hold down. If I want to increase the amount of summits, single left click, right click, drop down, add vertex. Now you have another. You can elongate, you can make tighter radiuses, and then same thing with the pink line. Right click, add, able to add the summits. Now, another thing you can do with the area tool is, right now the amplitude is set at 13 millimeters through the whole crest. What this allows you to do is, if I single left click on one of the summits, down at the bottom here it says amplitude at vertex. So what I'm able to do is control that single summit, and I can kind of decrease that one so it's not gouging in the patient at that one spot. So I can gradually go from 9 millimeters to 13 all the way back down, and I can taper this as well. And then same thing would apply, that if you wanted to symmetrize that to the other side, right click, Symmetry, copies it to the opposite side. Now, if you have an order form or you have measurements and you want to put measurements and apply them to your model, we need to apply the measure marks. So what we do is cursor line, place it where you want to put your measure mark. Top menu line, Advanced Tools, Add Measure Mark. Waist, we'll make that level 0. That's where all our measurements are going to come from. So when you measure up to xiphoid or pubis, that'll be the 0 point. Select OK. Now once you select OK, if you look at where I'm holding the cursor, it says waist, and then the H, the height, that's active now. So as I left click and go up the model, you can see it's reading live time. So when I apply my other measure marks, I can put them accurately wherever I want them. So let's just throw in a couple more here. I'm going to put one at the bottom. Put one at the troke, add measure mark. And once I apply them, I just left click off to the right to kind of deactivate. And when they're red, that means it'll move on you. So if I double left click and it turns red, I'm able to move that up and down. So let's throw on ASIS. And you can name these whatever you'd like. Just initial them. You can spell them out. That's all up to you. Personal preference. And you can put as many measure marks as you want on the model. You can identify more areas if you want, or less, depending. I like to do about this much for starters, and then the model doesn't get too choppy when you apply your measurements. Now, once you have your apply measurements set, you can go to the Tool panel and click on your Measurement tab. Now what you have is, you have the circumference, anterior, posterior, and ML. And what you see listed here now is the actual measurements on the model on the screen. So if you want to manipulate them, you can click on circumference, and if you have your order form of measurements, you're able to increase or decrease as needed. So when I modify, I like to do circumference and ML just like you have on your order sheet, and then I'll do the AP last. So it's as easy as just scrolling your wheel in and out to make your adjustments. Once you're set, check mark accept, and your tool is saved. Now, another tool that's pretty cool here is the radius tool. Now the radius tool, that's got a few different functions. It can act as a ply tool, where you can ply up like putting on stockinets, or ply down. And to do that, you leave it on total and you click on all. Increase or decrease your amplitude, and it's like putting stockinets on and off. So what you could do is left click on your model, put your cursor line at a certain point on the model, and you can actually watch real time the model change. So if you just want to ply up to hit a certain circumference, you can scroll up and down to do that. Now, we'll go back into that tool one more time. Now, application zone. Similar to the other tools, you have your levels. I like to use 3 levels. The 4 does the same thing, it just adds a different level inside. I prefer the 3, but you can try either way. Alright, so we'll go 3 levels. Left click, left click, left click. Apply those on there. And if the model gets too busy with all the lines on here, what you can do is top menu line display, and you can turn on or off your measure marks. Alright, so once we get these set, amplitude, scroll in or out, and again, same thing, you can left click and move your modification in real time. Check to save it. I'll go back in. Right now I'm going to adjust that lordosis a little bit. Scroll down, you click on the direction you want to. Top view, alrighty, and one more thing we'll show you with the radius tool. Left click, 3 levels, 1, 2, 3. There's also a symmetry, meaning, let's say I click left in symmetry. Now I have my application zone already applied. Now you can see with symmetry, what happens to the left happens to the right, or if you uncheck symmetry, you're able to make a push just on one side. There again, if you had to make a push, you could also use the shift tool, ML, and you can make your shifting as well. You have an elongate tool. You can stretch the model. Total, elongate the whole model. It just adds the increase in between the top and the bottom, or you can control a certain area, say 2 levels, and in between the 2 levels, that's where your elongation happens. Alright, let's see what else kind of cool tools we get. I think for basic introduction, that'll pretty much get you started. I would say get a practice model, start playing with the tools. If you have any questions, just call us here at Boston Brace Customer Service, and we'll get you set up with a webinar or one-on-one. We'll also do some more training videos in a more advanced features as well. Thanks for listening. Any questions, give us a call, shoot us an email. Alright, thank you, and have a good day. Alright, Now that you get a little modifying under your belt, a little bit of experience with the tools, you may want to try and export that model for fabrication. Okay, Rodin has two types of file formats. One is the AOP. Basically, that's a vertical axis model, spinal, cranial, knee, BK, AK, those types of model types. Okay, the other format is STL. That would be for AFOs or models that have more of a curve to them. And STL is also capable of exporting any type of model. The difference being AOP is a lot smaller, easy to attach in an email and send for fabrication. Alrighty. To export an AOP, with your model up on the screen, up in the top left menu line, click on File. Drop down, click on Save As. Click on Export AOP. Now, export AOP. In this window, the default is 10, 100, 100, 10. I like to change it to 3 millimeters. I leave the 100, 100, and then I change to 0 millimeters. This just gives the model a little bit more detail on the export. Alright, once you have that all set, click on Export. You can choose where you'd like to save the model. Sometimes I tell people to set up a folder on the desktop and save their AOPs inside of that, because you can pretty much purge out the AOPs because you'll still have the original model. Alright, so once you select where you want to save it, give it a name, click Save. That's all there is to it. Then you create your email, attach your order, and then attach the AOP file. Now, to do an STL file attachment, it's the same process pretty much. Top menu line, click on File, drop down, Save As. Top menu line, click on STL, and it's pretty much the same way. You can set up a different directory to save them into, or you can save it into the patient folder. It's basically however you'd like to set it up. Give the file a name and save. Alright, that's it. Now, let's look at the other types of Rodin file formats. Alright, we have the AOP. That's the smaller basic interchange format that you can email off to different facilities for manufacturing. There's the STL also, which is used for AFOs. It can do any model type, but primarily used for AFOs. RXP, now that's the actual CAD model in the patient folder. RXP, let's take a look in the patient manager. As you select on your model, that's the gold one. The R4S, that's the actual scan that was taken. That gets automatically saved inside the patient folder. And that will show up as a gray model or a red model depending. But that would be the R4S. Next you have the RSN. The RSN is when you take a scan and you save it before you process it into the Rodin modification software. Alright, so that's the rundown on the file formats. Okay, now that you have the AOP and STL exporting down, let's look at importing AOPs and STLs. Alright, to import the AOP, we're going to create a patient folder. So go into your patient manager. Remember, that's the small red folder, or you can go to top menu, file, drop down, patients as well. I'm going to create a patient folder. Click OK. Create your patient folder to the left hand side with the 0 indicates no file or scan attached. So to import the AOP, I want to right click, new form library. Identify your model type. Click OK. Now we're going to browse for the AOP, and this can be saved on your desktop, can be anywhere. Select your model. Click on Open. Open again. Alright, that's all there is to it. Now, to import your STL, pretty much the same process. Find your patient or create one. Right click, new form. The difference with an STL is now we're going to select rescan. Model type. Now we're going to browse for that. Once you find your STL, click open. Now with STLs, you have to do the alignment process, which anybody who's already scanned is familiar with this process, but if you're not, in this window, what you have is your top view, front view, right view. The free view, in this view, if you right click and hold down, you can rotate that model to look at all different angles. In the top view, if you left click, hold down, you'll get the 4 arrows. You're able to shift the model in alignment. That little white crosshair, that's the axis in the software. If you needed to rotate the model, you could right click, you get the double arrows, and then roll your mouse left and right and you rotate the model. Those same techniques apply in the front view and the right view as well. So in the front view, if I left click, hold down, I'm able to shift. If I right click, you can tilt left and right. And again, in the right view, if I needed to tilt my model back and forth or shift it, able to do so. If you get the model in a little bit of a crazy direction, you can always go back to your reset position. That's this button up top left here, and that'll bring you right to the original import. So click reset, that snaps you right back in. You can also zoom in and out with your mouse wheel. Once you get your model aligned, click next. Now, lower left sections limits. This gives you the option if you want to delete distally or proximally on your model. You can either highlight it, use your scroll wheel, or you can single left click on the up and down arrows. Same applies with top section. You can take down with the scroll wheel or the mouse. Once you're happy with what you have on the screen, click finish, click open model, and there you go. That's all there is to it. Pretty basic, pretty easy. So that's for the AOP and STL imports. Okay, now we're going to take a look at cranial reporting with Neo. Alright, with the cranial loaded onto the screen, you're going to set your cursor line at the desired location where you want to take your measurement from. So, left click on your mouse, hold down, you can see the cursor line moves with the cursor. Drop it at the location where you want to take your measurements. Always remember that that diamond indicates the anterior or the front side of the model. If you need to check your location, you can always put the cranial in a side view, and you can left click and also change the height here as well. Just remember, if you do it this way, you want to go in the front view and put your diamond to the front. So what I'll do is click on my cube anterior and then left click where I want to drop that diamond. Okay, now our height is set. From here we want to create the measurement box. So top menu line, click on display. Now we're going to click on the trade tool right here. Left click on that, that brings up our preview window of our measurements, circumference MLAPs, cross cranials, and the CVAIs. Alright, now we want to create the report. So again, we'll go back to the top menu line. This time click on miscellaneous. Now we have the reporting icon. Single left click on that. That creates the document, puts it right back in the patient folder. So to access that document, we want to go back into the patient manager. Left click on the red folder. Now it creates the report, puts it back inside the folder in chronological order if you have multiple reports. Now, you can't change the name what we have here in the patient folder. It just reads report HE and the date in which it was created. So your other options are, from here you can print by clicking on your print icon. Sometimes these are located at the top of the window here, or if they're not there, take your cursor and kind of hover it over the top of the page and the bottom of the page, and that will generally bring up the printing and saving. So if you wanted to print icon if you have a printer attached. If you want to save it to email it at a later date, click on Save. Here's where you select the folder where you want to save it to, and you can also create a separate folder to save all your cranial reports inside of. And now we want to give it a name. You can use the default name, but that gives the whole path of where the file actually is. So what I generally do is I'll cut out all but just the name itself. So highlight, delete, highlight, delete. I'll leave the word report and then just put a date on there. And click Save. Once you have that, you can close out. Brings you back. At this point, you can just close it out and you're all set. Alrighty, again, I'm Dan. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed and learned a few tricks with Rodin Neo. Stay tuned for additional webinars and tutorial videos. If you have any questions, you can contact our customer service department here at Boston Brace. Our number is 1-800-262-2235.